I'm doing this unicycle thing because the whole series this month is about balancing act in June, while I'm with you for the next, I think, 3 more Sundays. And life, kind of like, I've been talking about unicycle and how life is not like that. It's requires balancing skills, not just sports, right? But whether it's in our relational world, marketplace, working with people, even in family, dynamics, school, education, managing time. A lot of this is really, we don't really necessarily call it that or look at it that way, right? But it requires balancing skills. So that's kind of like what we're talking about in this series. So each week I've sort of promised you just kind of to keep things fun a little bit, give you a little excitement. So each Sunday we're going to prepare just a real short clip of these crazy unicyclists, okay? So we're going to watch another one right now, maybe a couple minutes, maybe a minute. And I could totally see myself riding. I could get into that. Okay, let's do this. It ain't for me. Raise your hand. Okay, a few hands. I could get into it. Anybody? Come on. Okay, what is this? Not sure. You're interested in trying it out? Maybe? Sometime, okay. You should try it. It's not as, well, my hope, my dream is one day I bring my bike and as I'm speaking here, ride around this thing. Would that be cool? That's my hope. One day. I'm not that good at this point, but one day maybe next year. Okay. So, but next week maybe Myung-han will find another video clip for us. But it actually, somebody told me, or I watched this one YouTube video, and it says you just have to practice 10 hours. You just have to invest 10 hours. And you will not maybe really master it or learn to know how to ride it, but at least balance. You can actually go a little bit. And you learn initially just inch by inch. But if you really invest 10 hours, just 10 hours, you can balance yourself on the unicycle. That's cool, right? I mean, we can all afford 10 hours, I think. So anyway, I get lots of questions from kids in my neighborhood. I live near here. But when I'm out and about riding my unicycle, I guess it's natural. And honestly, however, adults don't really seem to care that much. They don't really care whether you ride a uni or whatever you do. But kids do. Why? I think they have curious minds, right? They're more curious than us adults. They would ask questions like this. How much does the unicycle cost? It's actually way cheaper than your typical bicycle, normally. Unless you get some fancy Japanese bikes or something like that. That's more for tricks, And then some of the questions that these kids would ask is it dangerous to ride? My answer would be no if you're wearing the proper gears and helmet and all that. And then another question I commonly get is, how long does it take to learn? like I just mentioned, it doesn't really take that long. You just have to, you have to kind of grin and bear, okay? Because it does take a while, getting the balancing act, right? It's just like learning how to bicycle initially. Now, some kids even ask questions like, does it hurt when you fall? Duh. But again, it's a kid question, right? And then one question that always pops up is this. Do they have brakes? What do you think? Okay, some are shaking your head, some are nodding. Okay. It depends on the bike, type of bike. If you're doing like some crazy people, like these guys, they do like uni on mountains, okay? So if you're doing mountain unis, then you usually generally have a brake because you're doing a lot of downhill riding as well, okay? But for most cases, like the one that I own, it does not have a brake. Now that's a real smart question though, because you want to be able to stop the thing, right? And the answer to that question is, in my case, there are no brakes, but some bikes do have brakes. So then, how do you stop? Is another follow-up question I get from these kids, since it doesn't have a brake. How do you stop the thing? You just kind of step off from it, basically. As strange as that sounds, you just literally, you step off from it. Weird, right? They don't go as fast. Some of these guys can go faster than others, but they don't go as fast as bikes, generally speaking. So you just step off from it. Simple as that. You lean forward a little bit, and you kind of jump off. And with one hand, you gently grab the seat from behind you so that it doesn't fly everywhere, If you can just fall off, but then the bike goes everywhere. Well, all that sounds pretty simple, but it does require a bit of practice. In other words, stopping takes practice. Did you catch that? Let me repeat what I just said. Stopping takes practice. In life, it seems like we constantly learn about skill of maybe moving faster, quicker. But what about the skill of stopping or slowing down, for that matter? My choice of winter sports is snowboarding, normally. I go pretty much, try to go every winter with our kids. But if you snowboard, there's a way to ride, but there's also a way to fall. Because if you're not careful, the most common form of injury from snowboarding is injury to your wrist when you fall, because of the weight that's placed on your wrist and the icy grounds, right? I suppose it's just too much weight and pressure on your wrist. So the best way to fall, I think, or I've learned, if you can manage, is to fall on your butt so that you don't put too much weight or pressure on your wrist so you don't hurt your wrist. In essence, there seems to be this thing called the art or skill of falling in other sports as well, probably, or the art of stopping. So it is in life, isn't it? But who teaches us this stuff? Parents? Teachers? Pastors? I hope so, to some measure. When's the last time you've heard a TED Talk or watched a YouTube video on the art of falling in life? Anyone? Art of falling? Slowing down in life? It's a tricky question, isn't it? Matthew 17:4 says this. In the Message version of the Bible, it's just one verse that I'm going to share with you today. Peter broke in. Master, this is a great moment. What would you think if I built 3 memorials here on the mountain? One for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Peter has this moment. He has this awesome experience where this, light brightly shines, through Jesus' face, and he just can't believe what's going on. So it's like he loves this moment and loves this experience, and they're on the mountaintop, right? And he wants to just linger there. He wants to stay there, but Jesus stops him. Nobody else. He's so excited. He's so into it. He's so into himself, nobody's able to stop him. But Jesus does. Peter had this, grandiose plan of staying there longer and making these monuments, right? He liked what he just saw. The text says, we didn't read that portion of the Bible in Matthew 17, but the text says before it, sunlight poured from Jesus' face. The radiance, you see, was so bright. Peter wanted to just stay there and hang for a while. Maybe a day, maybe 2, maybe 3 days, maybe a week, maybe longer, who knows? He wanted to stay there. And no one was about to stop him other than Jesus. He's a planner, like some of us perhaps. But Jesus stops him. No can do, Peter. We have to go back down to where we came from because that's where people are. And we have to engage with them rather than be satisfied with the mountaintop experiences. So Jesus stops him. So then the passage goes on to read that they came back down, and at the bottom of the mountain, they were met by a crowd of waiting people. Waiting for Jesus, right? You see, this is the ministry of Jesus, isn't it? He stops Peter. And sometimes he stops us. Because you have to stop in order to notice people. You have to stop. There's a film, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Letters to Father Jacob. It's an older Finnish drama or film, probably came out like in the 70s. And I was just introduced to it, I think, last year. Korean title is something like 야곱 신부의 편지, I think it's called. Letters to Father Jacob. But it's a classic, based on real events or true events. Layla, in this film, is a pardoned convict, okay? She serves time. She's been serving time for quite a while, okay? So this is Layla. She actually gets released under the condition of working for this priest, Father Jacob, as his assistant. Because if you've seen the movie, you know, but this man, Father Jacob, is visually impaired. He can't see. But he's getting so his ministry basically is receiving letters and responding to them. But see, since he can't see, since he's visually impaired, he can't read the letters and he can't write letters. So he needs somebody that can help him, an assistant, essentially. So he had a lady friend that was helping him write and read and open up all these letters and send them back. But this lady got kind of old, and so she had to retire. So basically, Father Jacob needed a new assistant, a new helper that could bring the letters from the mailbox, open them up, read them for him, and then also write letters in response. So that was basically Father Jacob's ministry. That was his work. And he did this for years and years. And a lot of people with, for counseling needs, family needs, various issues in life, they would write to Father Jacob. It's a cool movie, if you can watch it sometime. So anyway, this, Father Jacob, since he's, he can't see and he needs help, Layla, finally he finds from the nearby prison, he talks to the managers or the workers, the staff at the prison, and asks for help. Is there anyone that could help me? Anyone that could serve me? Maybe somebody that did time for a while and they're maybe a model convict, and then you can kind of have them come to our home, stay with me, and help me with these letter writing. So they decide to do this. Eventually, they find this person, Layla, and they ask if she's willing to go help Father Jacob. And she figures, hey, it's a lot better than staying in this cold and dark prison, right? It's actually a legitimate house, a home that, she can fix her own meals and hang with Father Jacob and reading letters. I mean, how hard that can be, right? How hard could it be? So anyway, she takes the job and stays with Father Jacob. Anyway, one day, it gets kind of so boring and dry. Because it's repetition. I mean, how many of us like repetition? I mean, it's good. We need it in life, right? For life skills and whatnot. We need to repeat things. But I mean, just day after day, reading these letters for Father Jacob and then replying to them. This is all like tedious work. So she gets frustrated. She gets anxious. She gets bored. And she just doesn't want to do this thing anymore. So she starts throwing out these letters. Like there's a little water well nearby Father Jacob's house. She would go out to the mailbox. There's all kinds of letters. But then she would just throw most of them down the well. And then maybe take 1 or 2 letters back inside to Father Jacob and read them. And eventually what happens? People, they don't get replies from Father Jacob anymore. So they just stop writing. And so eventually Father Jacob gets kind of depressed. Because, oh man, people now they don't care. They don't want to write to me anymore. So he gets discouraged. He gets depressed and he doesn't know what to do. And then eventually Layla gets super weary and decides she had enough of this type of work and decides to steal some money from Father Jacob. He had this bunch of cash stored in this jar, but he can't see. So if Layla steals it, he doesn't really know that it's gone until he checks on it. So one day she gets so frustrated and bored and she sees this money, she decides to run away with it. So she calls a cab, takes this stack of cash, right? Doesn't tell Father Jacob anything that she's taking off or anything like that. She just figures she'll go somewhere because anything would be better than this. I mean, she came from prison. She thought this was life, pretty decent life that she had. But then after a long time doing these letters and all this back and forth, she gets so bored and frustrated, she wants to just take off. So finds this cash, calls a cab. She gets in the cab. Cab driver asks, what do you think the cab driver asks? Where to, ma'am? Right? Where to? And then she just freezes because she hasn't thought about that. Because she has nowhere to go. The prison's like the only place she's been, pretty much. And if she leaves Father Jacob's house, she has nowhere to go, no place to turn to, right? No one to turn to as well. So she just stays silent. The cab driver asks her again for the second time, where to, ma'am? She's frozen. She doesn't do anything. She can't say anything. Cab driver is just sitting there waiting for her to reply. Then eventually, she realizes this place is her home. So she stops and realizes this is where she belongs. So she eventually gets out of the cab and goes back inside. Anyway, that's sort of the story of this, movie. But I think if you can watch it, you'd have more appreciation for the movie. But in that moment, she realized she was exactly where she belonged. But you see, she had to stop to come to that realization. She realized that that was her real home, perhaps her only home, where she belonged. I think our experiences are much the same. We have to come to a complete stop in life in order to look back and look ahead as well. There's a theory I've recently come across. It's not my theory. I read about it. But it's called mental reverse clause. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's basically about a mental state, especially when you come across obstacles in life. We get stuck from time to time, right? Or we run into obstacles. That's just part of life. And then when you run into these obstacles, what do? You can give up, or you can find a different way, right? So this article or this piece of literature says this. I think we have this on screen. Do we? Do we have this, Myung-an? There we go. Let me just read this for you. Obstacles are part of life. It's not pat, okay? It's part of life. Things happen, stuff gets in our way, situations go awry. But nothing can stop the stoic mind when it's operating properly because in every course of action, it has retained a reverse clause. What's that? It's a backup option or plan. If a friend betrays us, our reverse clause is to learn from how this happened and how to forgive this person's mistake. If we're thrown in prison, our reverse clause is that we can refuse to be broken by this change of events and try to be of service to our fellow prisoners. Cool, right? When a technical glitch erases our work, done that, done there? Anywhere? Anybody? When a technical glitch erases our work, our reverse clause is that we can start fresh and do it better this time. Our progress can be impeded or disrupted, but the mind can always be changed. It retains the power to redirect the path. You can see how critical it is for us to always have a mental reverse clause that we can cling to, right? But you see, this requires slowing down or stopping as well, doesn't it? Or actually coming to a complete stop, so that we can take the time to breathe and reflect and invite God into the very present moment of our lives. There's only one way to stop a unicycle, and I've shared that already with you. You have to stop pedaling, and insofar as you don't pedal, the bike will naturally stop. And then you lower your upper body, lean forward, and step 1 foot first to the ground. That's it. Got that, right? You slow down, stop pedaling, lean forward, like you're doing a Korean bow, and step off. It's as easy as that. Basically, you stop the motion of pedaling altogether. That's the first step. And then you lean forward. And then you slide off the bike and step off. You see, the trouble is, we often don't want to step down like Peter. He had this mountaintop moment where he was so excited. He saw this glorious experience he was part of and just wanted to stay, linger on, and not go back down where people were waiting for Jesus. And sometimes we're like that. We like the mountaintop experiences a bit too much, like Peter in the passage of Matthew. We want to keep the ball in motion. We want to keep things in action. We want to keep it rolling. We want to stay where the excitement is, where the fun is. I don't know if you heard this story from Pastor Sonny. You might have. But he told this story to me once where he and his family traveled to the States, and on their way back, I guess the plane was like full. So, he was assigned to economy section, but then he was bumped up. Anybody have these bumped up experiences on airplanes, on flights? Yeah. Cool moment, right? It's awesome when you get bumped up to like business class or first class even, right? I mean, that would be like ideal. I mean, we shared about like your favorite vacation spots. And just imagine for a moment, just imagine with me for a second, what if on your vacation you were bumped up to first class? I mean, that would be awesome, right? That would be a God thing, right? It'd be amazing. Anyway, Sonny had that moment. I don't know if his entire family was, but at least he said he was bumped up to business class. And it was so cool. I mean, he loved it. The service, the food, the drinks. I mean, everything is just out of this world, right? And you know what he did? He landed in Incheon, and he asked the stewardess. Everybody's like getting off the plane, right? Everybody's like, seatbelt, you take your seatbelts off, grabbing their bags, and they're getting out because they're eager to go back home. But Sonny, crazy Sonny, he has his seatbelt still, buckled up. He's staying there. He's not getting out of his seat. And so eventually, one stewardess comes up and says, hey, it's time to get off. Everybody's getting out, and you better get out of the plane. And you know what he asked her? Asked this lady? Is there any way I could just stay here, linger, and just stay on the plane? Not get off, because I've never had this sort of service in my life. I love it. Can I stay here? on business class. I don't want to leave. I don't want to go home. Because when I go home, I know I'm not going to get the same kind of service, same kind of food, right? That's kind of like Peter. In this passage in Matthew 17, he wanted to stay and linger and not go and serve the needy people where Jesus wanted to take him to. And we have those moments, don't we? We're having too much fun and we don't want to get back on the ground. We want to stay above ground. We want to have the better view from the top. We like the magical moments and the mountaintop experiences. Do you remember what Peter said? Can we stay up here longer? Can I make these monuments in your name and just stay? Do we really need to go down? Was his question. Do we really need to go down and hang with the people and help them and serve them and preach to them? Do we really need to do that? Can I just stay here a bit longer? But Jesus always reminded his followers, including Peter, that he was not about the mountaintop experiences. Maybe to get away from the crowd now and then would be okay. But he would always remind them, our ministry is down here. Our ministry is with the people. Our ministry is in the uttermost parts of the world, not at the mountaintop. Let's pray together, shall we? After we pray, we're going to sing our last song together, and I'm going to invite you to stand in a minute as we sing together this last song. But let's just take a moment right now and think about this passage and what Peter was saying. You know, mountaintop experiences are great. We need them from time to time. But again, Jesus reminds Peter and Jesus reminds us in this passage that that's not really where we belong. Maybe it's good to be there now and then, but we really belong where people are, and people have different needs. And we know that, you know that, CIC knows that, the church knows that. And God calls us, God has gifted you guys in different ways. Very different ways. And I'm sure a lot of you or most of you are using those gifts. But we need to invite God and ask Him, you know, Lord, am I maximizing the use of those gifts? Am I maximizing my time to serve people? Am I maximizing my energy and serving people in the name of Jesus? So let's just go to God right now, and you can pray in your own words. And after we're done praying, I invite you to stand, and we're going to sing this last song and close today's service.